Good morning and a very hearty welcome to Anthropology class. And we are towards the end of our philosophical anthropology, and we are with spiritual aspect. And in the spiritual aspect, man as an ethical being, that is the point that we are discussing. And we have taken up Immanuel Levinas' ethical notion. Clear? And then Immanuel Levinas, a French Jew, brought out beautifully well the ethical dimension in human beings. Clear? And in the last class, we analyzed faith and the various implications of faith, the consequences of it, and all that. And we are towards the end. And perhaps the last point of it is that the epiphany of the faith and the ethical demand that follows leads us to a responsibility through and for the other. This sentence you need to write down, because we have already analyzed and I concluded. And this is a conclusion of what we had been trying to say. So, the epiphany means manifestation. The epiphany of the faith and the ethical demand, the face of the other, arises in me an ethical responsibility. That is what we said in the last class and concluded. Therefore, the epiphany of the faith and the ethical demand that follows leads us to a responsibility through and for the other. Yes. Responsibility. Responsibility for and responsibility for, responsibility through and for the other. Responsibility through and for the other. It's a beautiful sentence. It can be explained with so much time, because in other words, the face of the other demands from me, yes, don't forget, demands from me a responsibility. In other words, I am responsible for the other, and the consequences are many. In other words, the face of the other arises in me a responsibility for the other. In other words, seeing the other, I cannot sit quiet. I cannot keep myself away. I cannot close my eyes and ignore him. As something, a responsibility that I need to take for the other, through and for the other. So there comes the question, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are. You are your brother's keeper. So in other words, a responsibility. And now, responsibility and ethics will be connected. Responsibility and justice will be connected. That is what is going to be the next point. Clear? Justice. Yes, responsibility and justice. Yes, we replace love with justice. We are very well accustomed with loving others. But then, as Levinas would say, yes, loving others means, yes, doing justice for the other. Therefore, justice is prior to love. If you deny justice, you cannot love the other. That's the point. That is what the point that I am going to explain. But then, prior to that, yes, the epiphany of the faith and the consequent responsibility, the epiphany of the faith and the ethical demand arises in me a responsibility for the other. Okay, this in turn brings us to the heart of ethics. So thus we arrive at the heart of ethics. What do you mean by ethics? Well, we will be dealing ethics in the next semester, for the second semester. We will immediately follow the theodicy, but then ethics will be coming. There we will take up again, but at the same time, here we come to the heart of ethics. Keep it in mind. Clear? We need to remember. Yes, this in turn brings us to the heart of ethics, that is right and justice. Right and justice. We don't talk about love. Yes, right and justice. Justice, what is justice? I will define it shortly. Wait for it. Okay, to the heart of ethics, that is right and justice. Rest also you write down. I will go slow. My responsibility for the other. My responsibility for the other becomes others, O-T-H-E-R apostrophe S, others right. So, my responsibility for the other is others right. Don't get confused. If the face reveals my responsibility, the face of the other reveals my responsibility for the other, means, yes, that is the other's right. He has a right. Therefore, you cannot deny it. Yes, my responsibility for the other becomes others' right and a demand of justice. And a demand of justice. Please remember this sentence. Okay, those two sentences. The epiphany of the face and the ethical demand that follows leads us to the responsibility, to a responsibility through and for the other. This in turn brings us to the heart of ethics, that is right and justice. Now, what is right and what is justice? My responsibility for the other becomes others' right. My responsibility for the other is others' right. In other words, well, we help the poor. Yes, we say we are practicing charity, but it is others' right over us. We are bound to give them. It is their right. If they are hungry, they need to be fed. Who has to feed? We immediately say the state government or the panchayat and all that we say, or the central government. But then, as a neighbor, it is also my responsibility, and that responsibility is others' right, and that is at the heart. We are at the heart of justice. Okay, by demand of justice. Hence, to love one's neighbor is. To love one's neighbor is not simply an act of charity. Hence, to love one's neighbor is not simply an act of charity, but rather it means to accept the fact. Rather, it means to accept the fact that the other has right over me. The other has right over me. I will read that sentence once again. Hence, to love one's neighbor is not simply an act of charity, but rather it means to accept the fact that the other has right over me is of worth reflection. A reflection, we need to reflect every time. So that is something we need to remember, the epiphany of the face. The epiphany of the face as evolving a responsibility for the other. Responsibility for the other is others' right over me. And that is what is justice. Now, you don't find anywhere, what do you mean by justice? Also a little out of the way, but then keep this definition of justice with you. What is justice? Now, the other has a responsibility right over me, we said. If that's the case, we are at the heart of justice, we said. What do you mean by justice? Justice is, yes, this is 5th century BC, a philosopher called Simonides. Yes, 5th century BC, a philosopher called Simonides defined justice as render to everyone his due. Render to everyone his due or her due. His bar, her, you put it clear, no? Yes. Render to everyone his or her due. Yes. Giving others their right. Their due means D-U-E means, yes, giving others their right. So justice is giving others their right. You see how fitting it is? The explanation given by Levinas is very close to this 5th century definition of justice. This I studied when I studied theology, clear, in 1987. More that you find from the class notes. 1987. How many years have passed? Still the definition is within my reflection. So, others have the right over me. Now, well, it is going to be a kind of conclusion like a few paragraphs. According to Levinas, the only basis for a truly ethical right is the unconditional responsibility. Unconditional responsibility. Unconditional responsibility which the face imposes on the eye. Which the face imposes on the eye. In other words, the face of the other demands from me an unconditional responsibility. Underline 1,000 times. Follow. Yes, the face of the other demands from me an unconditional responsibility for the other. Not simply, if I have the convenience, I do it. If I have something, I will do it. If everything is okay, I will do it. No. The face of the other demands from me an unconditional responsibility for the other. Yes. Responsibility which the face imposes on the eye. Thus, it is better to say that one is called to be just. Yes. It is better to say one is called to be just. One is not called to be, yes, to love. Yes, one is called to be just. One is called to be just. A just person, an ethical person, clear. One is called just, than to be charitable, than to be charitable. Yeah, charity anybody can do. Follow. I am called to be a just person. Okay. Justice is the striving for the right of the other. Yes. Render to everyone his due. Definition is simplified here. What is that? Justice is the striving. ST. Justice is striving. Justice is the striving for the right. For the right of the other. Yes. Yes, the other, who is the other? Other can be your neighbor, other can be far away. That is what we are coming to. Other can be far away and anywhere the other can be. Yes, justice is the striving for the right of the other, and this is the call the face of the other gives. Okay, and this is the call the face of the other gives. In other words, the other has essentially a social dimension. The other has essentially a social dimension. A social dimension. Not only my neighbor, anybody can be. So in other words, we are socially connected. His otherness includes a reference to all other people. Social dimension means to all other people. All other people means, yes, you explicate it. Can be all others, neighbors, in my village, in my country, outside, anywhere, everywhere. That's the point. A social dimension to all other people and to humanity at large. Means to any human being. That is what is meant. Clear? Yes. Thus, the universal brotherhood has primarily an ethical character. Yes. Thus, universal brotherhood has primarily an ethical dimension. Ethical character. Okay. Consequently, through my responsibility for the other, I become responsible for all others. I become responsibility for all others. In other words, I become responsible for the close by person, distant person, and the proximate and that's all. That is something very important. Okay. Then, this ethical responsibility to which the somatic factor, bodily factor and spiritual factor has led us is to be clearly differentiated from the existential approach developed by Marcel and Buber. We have already seen. In other words, this ethical responsibility to which, we have discussed, the somatic and spiritual factor is different from the ethical dimension developed by existential philosophers like Marcel and Buber. There it is a question of coexistence, clear? So, in other words, this ethical dimension that we have developed is to be differentiated from the existential approach which we have seen in the beginning. Go through your class notes and videos, you will find in what way it is different. That is what I am going to tell you. Yes, one is called here not for a mere coexistence. One is called here not for a mere coexistence. Yes. Not mere coexistence. That kind of an impression we get when we are, responsibility, all that is in Martin Buber, man is a mystery to be revealed and all, clear. One is called here not for a mere coexistence, but rather for a pro-existence. But for a pro-existence. What does it mean, pro-existence? I stand here for the other. Yes. All what I have, all what I possess is not only mine, it is also, the other has also a right over me and my possession. Therefore, it's not a mere coexistence, but it is a pro-existence. Pro-existence means for the other. Yes, for existence, which indicates that I exist for the other. Yes, pro-existence means I exist for the other. That is something very important. You see? Well, that is why, yes, if you start from the beginning, you will understand two-word definitions and all. Yes, man has the worth within himself, but yes, and that worth is that I exist for the other. Pro-existence. I am for the other. Okay. Pro-existence, which indicates that I exist for the other. Hence, in my responsibility for the other, hence, in my responsibility for the other, yes, I become my brother's keeper. Yes, biblical sense. Clear? Yes. Look at, it is not a mere coexistence, but it is a pro-existence. What does it mean? A pro-existence means I exist for the other. Yes, we can further explicate it by saying that I become my brother's keeper. Yes. In the Old Testament, somebody asked, am I? Where are you? Where is your brother? Am I brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? That was the question. Well, that was the answer. But now, look at, after having analyzed anthropology, we come and say we become a I exist for the other, a pro-existence. That means I become my brother's keeper. Okay, the last paragraph. Thus, this ethical aspect, yes, you can write down. Thus, this ethical aspect leads us, L-E-A-D-S. Thus, this ethical aspect leads us to a vision of man. Philosophical anthropology leads us to a vision of man. A vision of man based on solidarity and commitment. Based on solidarity and commitment. So in other words, I am called to be in one with, in solidarity with the other, and I need to commit myself for the other. All these sentences, try to become part of your memory system. Yes, the ethical dimension that we have developed is not merely a coexistence, as we find in the existential philosophers like Martin Buber and others, but rather it's a pro-existence. Yes, a pro-existence means I exist for the other. I become my brother's keeper, and thus there arises a solidarity and commitment for the other. It is an unconditional, yes, aspect. I cannot escape from the other. Okay. The anthropology that we deal with essentially, yes, you can write, the anthropology that we deal with is essentially related to ethics. Yes, man as an ethical being. The anthropology that we deal with is essentially related to ethics. But the question is, the somatic factor alone, in other words, the bodily existence alone can satisfy this stand. So in other words, simply we analyze man is said to be in the world, and myth sign, we are winding up. Yes, myth sign alone can give enough strength to support our view that man is a pro-existent being. I exist for the other. I become my brother's keeper. I have to have solidarity and commitment to the other. Well, we are asking, only a mere bodily existence or being in the world and myth sign with the other, can it support our stand? That's why. So in other words, it has to be, yes, moving to other dimensions, namely ethical dimension is to be, yes, dealt with beautifully, and also religious dimension. Clear? Means into God. These are the 2 points that we will be discussing at length in the coming days. First we go with, because of the understanding of with the university, well, we will be dealing with theodicy first and then ethics in the second semester. So we have come. See, this is what is anthropology. Man is essentially incarnate, yes, he is a bodily being, but then the bodily being is also a responsible being. A responsible being is being responsible means being responsible for the other. And so it is a pro-existence. I exist for the other. I become my brother's keeper. And thus there is a solidarity and commitment for the other. So I'll read that paragraph a little more clearly to give you the connection. Thus, this ethical aspect leads us to a vision of man based on solidarity and commitment. The anthropology that we deal with is essentially related to ethics. But the more relevant question is, can the pure somatic factor alone take us into this realm of solidarity and commitment? Our answer is, man cannot be compartmentalized rigidly to the somatic alone. Hence, we are led to the other aspect, the spiritual. This needs a process of self-transcending. Okay, a process of self-transcending. Slowly we are going to enter into theodicy. Therefore, this transcendence alone, we don't have to deal it with, because we are going to deal with the theodicy as well as for ethics. Clear, no? Yes, that is in by way of 3-2-2-3 is transcendence. Transcendence means, yes, vertically and horizontally. There is, yes, going beyond is the word transcendence. Well, there is egoistic transcendence. Yes, you come out of your ego and you grow. That is egoistic transcendence. There is a social transcendence. Yes, in social way, you are a social being. There is a transcendence. These are very simple because compared to what we are going to see. And then, well, there is also theocentric. Yes, the moment we move into the realm of the other, in support of the other, standing for the other, taking care of the other, I become my brother's keeper, and solidarity and commitment and all, yes, that needs a terrible support from behind. That is, yes, God element. That also we'll have to deal it with. Therefore, hereby we wind up our theology, the philosophical anthropology. My request to you, all of you, in the respective study houses, is that you go through it and discuss it in common in your own houses, and formulate if you have some questions and put it to me in my WhatsApp number or in my Gmail, cherianscurry@gmail.com. we will be starting with theodicy shortly, but then it's good to go through this in group. You have your group discussion and formulate your questions. So also the case regarding your third year other portions, namely Indian philosophy and contemporary Western philosophy. Yes, you discuss group by group in your chapter by chapter in your group discussion and formulate your questions to your respective professors. Thank you. Well, we will be meeting again. Once again, thank you for your patient listening. Thank you.